Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Climate Change and Innovation for Greening Financial Inclusion session breakout. My name is Hakim Al-Alami. I'm a head. Okay, we should start. It's okay? It's okay? So, welcome everybody to our Climate Change and Innovation for Greening Financial Inclusion session. My name is Hakim Al-Alami. I'm Deputy Director in Central Bank of Morocco, in charge of payment system oversight and financial inclusion. I will serve you today as your moderator. So. Before starting and introducing all our distinguished panelists, I get the floor to Mr. Malik Kazemi, who will be deliver the team sitting for our session. Mr. Allah Malik Kazemi is an eminent economist and banker, is still a vital pillar in the Bangladesh Bank, working on contacts at the age of near about 71 years as a change management advisor. His 41 years of service span all critical banking layers at Bangladesh Bank. Allah Malik Kazemi was deeply involved in Bangladesh Bank development policy manufacture, new policy floating rate implementation, and many other key work areas. Please, Mr. Kazemi.
Thank you very much, and good evening, good afternoon to all. Actually, those flattering words embarrass me a little. So, I've been working with the central bank, but it gives me really particular pleasure that coincidentally, I've been in this, I am now in this breakout session on a subject that we kicked off a couple of years earlier, or maybe 3 years earlier in Maputo, GPS, where we were kicking off the dialogue on the rationale for taking climate change challenges on board AFI's mandate. So, and digital financial services driven financial inclusion promotion is also going concurrently, relatively concurrently. So, from the Bangladesh perspective, I'll first talk about how inclusion, what's the imperative of including green finance in our AFI initiatives for financial inclusion, and how later I'll talk about how in Bangladesh the digital financial service promotion and green finance promotion are interacting synergistically with each other, reinforcing each other. So to begin with, green finance, why should we get involved? Because climate change challenges are very serious challenges, as the MDGs and SDGs tell us very eloquently, and our national development strategy have internalized all the relevant SDG goals in our development strategy. So we have to play our role as a leading public institution as how to contribute to that. And we see that challenges are being addressed in broadly two thrusts. The first is mitigation of the threats, kind of building up defenses against the risks of climate change threats, and the other is changing our habits, changing our lifestyles, changing our output practices to sustainable modes from the current modes, which are often not sustainable, not environmentally sustainable. Now, in the mitigation efforts, there are big ticket investments needed, and governments and multilaterals are active on it. On the adaptation side, climate change adaptation, where transition to sustainable practices of production and sustainable lifestyles. There is not much finance from that kind of fiscal support. So central banks can play a role. Now, we don't need a lot of money for that role because the finance flows are already there. They are going to unsustainable channels. You need to rechannel them to new ones, the sustainable ones. Now, that kind of transition needs some kind of startup support. And that's the kind of support that we are trying to extend through our green finance promotion initiatives. So this is helping private sector. Basically, private sector will be doing it because our 80%, more than 80% of our GDP is generated by private sector. So they are the ones needing the finance, and we need to facilitate and promote their access to finance for green purposes. Now, that's my argument, that green finance being such an important issue, we cannot afford to keep green initiatives unfunded. That is why it's a very legitimate subject for AFI for its own mandate. So this is the way it is progressing. Things are going ahead and we are pushing through. And on the digital finance side, actually some 8 to 9 years back, our government declared Bangladesh would be digital Bangladesh. Not just financial services, all financial, social services, and government's fiscal operations, fiscal collections, government's support operations, safety net operations, all will be digitized. And it's a big thrust. It's going on at full steam. And on the financial sector side of it, we are seeing to it that our payment system is modernized. We already have all the necessary infrastructure for mobile device, financial services through mobile devices, through internet-based services, through EFT, POS-based services. Now, with these services in operation, the inclusion initiatives are catching up much faster to the excluded households. One particular example is the renewable energy units, solar or biomass based, financed by green energy, financed by green finance, are connecting those excluded people to the economic value chains of the mainstream economy. So they are producing more output, they are producing more income, and they are creating also demand for more of these digital finance, fintech driven digital finance services. So one is interactively with the other. So I presume that this is more or less the situation elsewhere as well. So I'm looking forward to a very illuminating discussion on how things are going on around all our membership regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this valuable introduction.
I'm digitally literate.
As explained by Mr. Kazemi also, financial services play a vital role in enabling the poor and vulnerable people to cope with financial losses resulting from the impact of climate change. Such impact threaten the development gains resulting from increasing financial inclusion in developing countries and emerging countries. In fact, financial services are a tool to build resilience in the face of shocks related to climate change. Plus, financial services are a mechanism to increase the accessibility, affordability, and usage of cleaner technology that reduce contribution to climate change. For such reason, many countries from all over the world undertook serious policies in which financial sector has an important role to play, aiming and promoting sustainable development. This panel discussion will contribute to the wider conversation on the role of the whole stakeholders from public and private sector addressing financial technology, disruptive financial technology, and climate change, and how to leverage these rather than allowing them to become destabilizing risk. So, in this regard, allow me please to introduce the Moroccan experience. In Morocco, over the past 2 decades, our kingdom has undertaken important measures aiming at setting balance between environmental, economic, and social as parts of voluntary process of development. Aligned to the international agenda, Morocco is considered among the first countries to have submitted its intended nationally determined contribution as part of the 21 session of the Conference of the Party held in Paris, which aim at reducing greenhouse gas emission by 32% in 2030. And this requiring an estimated overall budget of $44 billion, American dollars. In this context, national stakeholders have been mobilized for the implementation of this commitment. The financial sector particularly play an important role to support the transition to a more sustainable economy, including projects for mitigating the carbon footprint of the economy and for adapting to climate change. In this spirit, a national roadmap for the alignment of the financial sector was a necessary step in order to coordinate and set a comprehensive and informal vision. This roadmap taken after a large consultation process and under the impetus of the scientific committee of the COP22 is based on five key areas: extending risk-based governance to socio-environmental risks, developing sustainable financial tools and products, promoting financial inclusion as a driver for sustainable development, and promoting financial inclusion as a promoting capacity building in field of sustainable finance. And the last area was increasing transparency and market discipline in Morocco. In addition, the Moroccan commitment extends the national scope and include promoting regional South-South cooperation based on the strong presence of the Moroccan financial sector in Africa, as well as the experience of the Moroccan Casablanca finance city. The key measure proposed in this framework is to progressively integrate environmental consideration in the public support offered to SMEs, especially through guarantee funds, and also co-financing and co-financing funds. The aim being to support investment projects in the green economy and the adaptation project to climate change. That's a brief overview of the Moroccan experience. In order to showcase different approaches related to sustainable development, I will invite first Mr. Just Momo Cissé. Momo Cissé is the Senior Manager and Coordinator of Financial Inclusion, Banking Supervision Department at the Central Bank of Sierra Leone. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry, I used to be in supervision department, but I've left about a year or so ago. But I'm still a supervisor or a regulator, for I was there for over 22 years. Thank you. We are talking about climate change, and somebody seeing a center, a regulator sitting might want to know, what is he doing here? We have a case study in Sierra Leone, and that uses the pay-as-you-go model, which uses a mobile phone. So this implies that they are operating in that ecospace, and in Sierra Leone, it is the regulators that are charged with the responsibility of supervising and regulating GFS. So therefore, it is very important that I give my own experience. All said, that done, the central bank, the mandate of the central bank, usually the Bank of Sierra Leone used to be maintenance of monetary policy and so on. But there are now modern mandates, modern functions that are quite too different from the traditional functions. We are now also charged, with the maintenance of financial system stability. In fact, that's the very reason that the central banks are now going further to interface with the public. Because if you want to stabilize the system, in the first place, the consumers have to have confidence in the system, and then with trust, the system will be stabilized. I will give a short background. About, I'm using SL for Sierra Leone. It's a very small country. Sometimes when I'm introducing Sierra Leone, some people might want to know where it is from. I've always used negativities. We are a very small country with a population of about 7 million. And very recently, we were hit last year by a very serious mudslide, where we lost up to about 5,000 people. Most of the preponderant activity of the people is agriculture, which accounts for about 75% of the livelihood, and then contributes to up to about 50% GDP. So this means I'm really not going into the specificity of talking about climate change. What are the factors that create all these problems? I'm not an expert in that, but just to say that with this greater proportion of activity, it means people are, our people in Sierra Leone are really becoming very hostile to the environment in terms of trying to get, to get their livelihoods. And 80% of the population, the last Fintech report shows that 80% of the population of Sierra Leone are financially excluded. We have about 14 commercial banks. We have 59 financial services associations. These are feeder institutions that feed into community banks, which are 17, and then 30 microfinance institutions or more. Yet the exclusion rate is very, very high, 80%. And also it will interest you to note that even though we have so many commercial banks, yes, the number of accounts holder is almost only close to 1 million, whereas the number of active account holders in mobile phone is more than 3 million. So it tells you that, it tells us that the mobile phone is becoming, more penetrative than the commercial banks. Equally so, the population, okay, sorry. Because we Sierra Leone heavily depend on agriculture, it means we use firewood, charcoal, and others actually to provide energy and lighting, and also kerosene, which is cheap. So the government has been in arrangements or agreement with different companies. One of those is the Azuri. They brought the solar payment system, which actually leverages on mobile money. At present, we have two mobile money operators in Sierra Leone, Orange Money and AfriCell Money. So, and I've been fortunate to attend several meetings, with these people, since it actually hinges on providing financial services. It is a very accommodating model for our people, which are low-income people, so they will not be able to afford this equipment at a goal. So what they do is, you get it and you start to pay on. So in Sierra Leone, this model rides on Orange Money. And the objective basically is to improve. Let me also inform you that even though, in addition to Sierra Leone having 80% financially excluded people, a greater proportion of those people are living in the rural areas. So which means access to financial services and product is really very, very limited to the Sierra Leoneans, only a small portion. Because most of the commercial banks, that are the brick and mortar institutions, they always try to concentrate themselves in the city and the urban cities. They don't go far away. So this Azuri system basically ensures that it improves the quality of living in the rural, in the rural area, because our people are very poor. So it basically improves the living standard of the people in the rural areas. Now, as central bankers, our role is actually to regulate the system. So when we got, this invitations from the Ministry of Ministry of Energy and Power. They are responsible for providing energy. So our promise, and a very strong promise that we made to them, was that since this model uses mobile phone, we will try to ensure as much as we could to create a regulatory enabling environment so that mobile phones can strive. Now, how do we do it? In the first place, we started with a challenge. Sometimes I talk more than the slide. Okay, I'm sorry about it. Okay. We said, okay, let us try to revisit our regulations. Some of them, like the Other Financial Services Act we have, which deals with the mobile money, is very old. It's about 2001. So with the help of the Office of the Treasury, US Treasury, they are assisting us. We're almost completed, reviewing it. And also the agent banking guidelines, they've also given us e-money. But before then, we have got this mobile money. What we did was, we followed the pattern of Kenya. We allowed the mobile money, because it is demand-driven. Most of these products are demand-driven. We allowed them to operate for some time, about 3 years or so, understood them, and then we developed mobile money guidelines. But the speed at which the DFS is improving in Sierra Leone, we therefore thought it necessary to say, instead of having only mobile money guidelines, which is just restricted, let us now get e-money guidelines, which will take other products into consideration. So as a central bankers, we also thought that, because of the speed, let us organize what we call a Fintech challenge. We made an announcement to put it on our website for Fintech companies to come up with products and services. And there are so many qualifications, eligibility criteria. It has, to be consumer-friendly, promote financial inclusion, and all the rest, and so on. So at the start, we got about 20 applications. This one was done in concert with Bank of Sierra Leone, FSD Africa, and UNCDF. So after 20 applicants, we went the first round and we got 3 winners, and we gave them $13,000 each to start, as a startup. Then we went the second round again, expecting that we targeted 2 winners, but only one actually passed the eligibility criteria. So we gave only one Fintech clearance that was a winner, and we gave $100,000 to that company. Now, one of the things that was interesting about this company, this Fintech company, was their product was something like a financial literacy and education using mobile phone. The consumers, we go through a training stages, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. They train you, they teach you what to do, and when you graduate, you go to stage 2, you go to stage 3, and then at the end of the day, they now certify you that this customer or this person has graduated and is capable or qualified to be given, a credit. It is sort of also acting as a credit reference bureau. So when we did that, we also said, okay, because we have got these fintech companies, they are coming with products and services that are really, we don't have existing rules and regulations for them. And it is not only, for the sake of competition. We want them to operate. So alongside, as the competition ended, we also developed, established the sandbox program. So one of the winners entered the box, and then there were 3 other fintech companies who already had, they have their startup capitals, and they also entered the box. But what is important, we are looking at in order to ensure that perhaps the pay-as-you-go succeeds, we are also very mindful of not only technology or innovations, but how it will come to stabilize or not destabilize the system. So the entry requirement, of course, was a bit stringent. Even though in Sandbox there are certain conditions you have to relax, but there are others we did not relax for sake of market integrity, for like AML and CFT, fit and proper persons test, and so on. We did not relax those. But the others are quite all right, and they will put other mechanisms in place to ensure that these companies, continues, because we want it to be done on a sustainable basis. So there's serious consumer protections, integrity, and all the rest that were put in place. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mobo, for this valuable presentation and the initiative and approach of Central Bank of Sierra Leone in order to address climate change. It's necessary to focus now on the role of the other stakeholders from private sector also. I will give the floor to Dr. Anton Galinovic. Mr. Anton Galinovic is the Dow EPCI team leader and the chairman of the Russian Carbon Fund. You are originated from Moscow? Yes.
Right, I'm from Moscow.
And has more than 30 years of experience in international political and economic relations, almost 20 years of experience in international climate policy issue, environmental market-based mechanism. Dr. Anton is also chairman of Association of European Business in Russia, Climate Policy Working Group, who is active participant of international and Russian climate policy private-public dialogue since 1998, and also researcher and key author of studies and papers about climate markets-based mechanism.
Thank you.
Please.
Today I'll try to present briefly our public blockchain-based platform, which is called a integrated platform for climate initiatives. It has been developed and launched. It is working already for 2 years. And initially, the minimal viable product that is already in existence and operating is providing for verification, issuance, registration of such mitigation instruments as carbon offsets, carbon credits. There's been 1.6 million carbon credits already issued in our platform, and Russian Carbon Fund actually launched the first climate change mitigation program in DAO IPCI, which is called a blockchain climate standard, which allows for registration and issuance of carbon credits, verified carbon credits, on public blockchain. And we are also supported, and I would like to express my, appreciation for an international team of advisors of Blockchain Climate Institute with a very knowledgeable and experienced international expert that support us with their expertise and relations. First of all, I'd like to point out a few inheritable characteristic of public blockchain. Well, probably you know that blockchain is a distributed ledger technology, but not only distributed ledger technology. It is a technology where the data is not only distributed along thousands or 10,000s of independent nodes synchronized together, but is also arranged in blocks linked together, and so it makes the data unalterable. You can't falsify, you can't change the data that has been entered into the public blockchain. And so it is, it's not only a new technical solution, but it introduces a wholly new economic paradigm of a peer-to-peer direct interaction between the economic agents, and eventually excluding the necessity for intermediaries, because it is a direct economic interaction. So the most important characteristics are its decentralization. It's there is no single point of failure, but it is at the same time and decentralized integrity, because it works on the basis of the same set of smart contracts, which are universal, and makes it easy for different participants to intercommunicate and, so to say, use the same protocols, use the same language to interact with each other. It is, as I've already said, it is a peer-to-peer interaction. It introduces a momentum, a triple entry accounting, which means that not only debit, credit are, but the very moment of the changes of debit and credit is accounted for. It's transparent. Everybody or anybody can see all of the transactions. The transactions are traceable, and as I've said, the data is unturnable. And I'd like, the platform is actually working right now and developing already, and now we are working on one of the live cases is the introduction of IoT data-based verification, which is most applicable for a small scale, for example, small scale renewable installations. And the beta testing was performed by an Energy Lab Chile, and in fact, it is directly relates to inclusion, because it's pretty difficult to include the micro installations into the whole mitigation policy, because the verification process is very expensive. certification process under major standards is very expensive. And you have to aggregate, the data from maybe small installations, but you have to aggregate it and have a very rigid system of accounting these results, and on the basis of these results to register and issue what's in Paris Agreement, what's called a mitigation outcomes, mitigation instruments or carbon credits. And we've developed such a system, we've tested it. It is based on the data which is gathered and aggregated from IoT devices that transmit the data, and then we have an algorithm using the grid emission factor to convert it into the carbon credits. It has been tested, not in operation yet, but beta testing is over. Manual mode is ready, and we'll make it a self-executing. And what I would like also to mention that, in fact, anything which is quantifiable and verifiable can be put onto the platform, onto the public blockchain, including not only mitigation instruments, but adaptation instruments, the losses and damages. If surveyors, for example, of the insurance company can quantify and verify those results, they can be put into the public blockchain, and that would make a much easier and transparent the process of, funding or remuneration of those damages that occur, as a consequence of climate change. It's perfectly technically possible. Now I have a video here that would can we? It's just to illustrate that the solution, it is not a concept or a plan, or white paper roadmap. It's actually working, and so this short video, which you could find on YouTube, just illustrates that. How actually the data is uploaded into the decentralized application with a unique hash. The document cannot be altered. This is a unique hash, and if you change one letter or just add a space, it will be a different hash, and the document cannot be falsified. And on the basis of this data, the transaction takes time because it actually goes to the public blockchain. And it's actually registered in the public blockchain. And then on the basis of the algorithm and this data, carbon credits are issued. So that's just to illustrate that this is a practical and already working solution. Now, also, I would want, to point out one more thing is that we have already mentioned here a nationally determined contribution, and we pay very much attention to the Paris Agreement Article 6, the internationally transferred mitigation outcomes. And the point is that introduction, every country a member of the Paris Agreement needs a system to, for nationally determined contribution to account for internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, and it's very expensive. Using the innovative approach of blockchain technology makes it much more cost effective and really much better in comparison with conventional schemes. That's why I wanted to present to you our solution. Here are the contacts, and we would be delighted to answer any questions and cooperate in any way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. I will give the floor now to Mr. Limin Chen. Sorry for pronunciation. Limin Chen serves as a Senior Vice President, member of Globalization Steering Committee, and General Counsel of Ant Financial Services Group. Lemons play an important strategic role in Ant Financial Globalization Initiative. He's also in charge of the group legal and compliance function, including IML sanction compliance function, supervising a team of over 250 legal and compliance professionals. Prior to joining Ant Financial in March 2016, Lemin was a partner in Simpson Taker Bartlett LLP and was head of firm's China practice. He worked on variety of equity and debt offering and transaction involving Chinese companies in telecom, technology, internet, financial services, and other sectors. We know, I think that we know a lot from Ant Financial, but how about trees?
Sure.
Please.
Thank you for the introduction. I would like to take this opportunity to really sort of share the private sector side of the practice, how we increase the awareness of green behavior, or low carbon behavior and activities through a very much fun and engaging way of doing it. That is one of the function on our app, Alipay, called Ant Forest. This presentation is given in conjunction with the Sustainable Digital Finance Alliance, SDFA, of which we are a co-sponsor. So thanks to them as well. Ant Forest really is what we would say makes a difference in counter climate change adverse effects. It is a testament of how private sector players can fulfill their social responsibilities. This is formulated in a way that is very much a social game, in the sense that it is a fun, it is a very engaging way of promoting green, or you can call low carbon awareness, and rewarding green low carbon activities and behaviors. And it engages all of the relevant stakeholders in our society to participate with a fun element, starting from consumers to green capital, green non-profit organizations, all the way to tree planters, thereby providing employment opportunities in areas where where they often affected by adverse environmental changes. And the product was launched about 2 years ago, and as of end of May this year, 350 million users have used this product, or we call a fun game. That's about 30% of China's population. And collectively, Ant Forest users have reduced carbon emission by 2.83 million tons, and have collectively planted 55.5 million trees. And how Ant Forest works is based on this core logic. First of all, low carbon activities occur in green scenarios such as walking, bike riding, public transportation, online utility payments, and online mobile ticket purchases that reduce paper usage. And I can name, the list goes on, but those are just some of the examples. Then the quantification of low carbon activities are determined by energy calculation algorithm. Then through users' interactive socialization of low carbon activities, then the activities are done through a value medium, what we call green energy. Users can essentially collect, steal, combine, or send green energy as gift. After they accumulate sufficient green energy, then they can plant a virtual tree. The energy calculation algorithm is based on the level of carbon reduction of a particular activity. For example, if you purchase a ticket to take a bus, then that is a very much a high level of green energy reduction of a carbon emission, or you ride a bike, or you purchase tickets that is in digital form, then corresponding energy level would be awarded to you. Once you collect those levels, certain levels, then you could plant a virtual tree on the app, in-app. Then Ant Forest users can then send the green energy they have collected to green capital or green non-profit organizations. Then those green organizations can pass those green concepts and branding to Ant Forest users in return. Then the users could send a message to the tree planters. Therefore, the virtual tree would be turned into a real tree. The Ant Forest real tree connects really, in essence, Ant Forest users' low carbon activities and behaviors with the real forests, while Ant Forest users support environmental protection by their own low carbon activities and behavior. Now, once sort of on the consumer side, you have sufficient engagement and the awareness of environmental protection is raised to a level that you can evidenced by 30% of the population participating in this sort of activities. Then we would be able to go further. So there are a number of other initiatives we are looking into, and some of which will be soon rolled out to engage merchants on Alibaba's platform, and perhaps sort of can roll out even to offline merchants. One of the initiatives we're soon rolling out is to promote green consumption. There are a number of steps involved. First, we would sort of establish carbon accounts for SMEs by replicating the success of our Ant Forest concept model on the business side. Qualify and accumulate carbon emission reduction on the business side. Then exchange the carbon reduction credits for financial benefits. step one is the creation of carbon energy. First, SMEs can start this sort of carbon accounts. Then they have the carbon accounts. Then they top up by prepaying, for example, donation to a green capital or green non-profit organization. Then the donations are converted into carbon energy and then used to recharge SMEs' carbon accounts. Step two is through green product certification to allow consumers to purchase green products and obtain green energy for ant forest. And different products could be assigned with a different level of green energy. For example, white goods product merchants using high energy efficiency refrigerators, washing machines, etc. And through that kind of activities, then you sort of have the participation not only on the consumer side, but also on the business side. Now, once business side have that level of participation, then the second initiative we're trying to roll out would be is a green business rating for SMEs based on digitalization level, green supplies internally. For example, at Alibaba, the kind of e-packaging, green appliance, green logistics, etc. Thirdly, green product and service. Then green publicity, for example, e-posters, e-initiatives, and so on and so forth. So once an SME have this green business rating, then the following step would be for green credit and green fund, so that we have sort of a captive circle from a consumer to sort of marketplace participants to business, and the business would be able to use the rating to have green loan, green subsidies, and more green policy. So this is the type of sort of a practice we have rolled out, and hopefully it can be rolled out. That's in China. Hopefully that can be replicated in other countries as well. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation, interesting presentation. Also in China, almost didn't work. I have a question for you, dear panelists. What do you see? What are the barriers? The main barriers to progress in fintech and for climate change, and how can the regulator and the government solve the associated risks?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but perhaps before the panelists get to their question, we can go to Masamba, who's waiting on the video conference. And
Okay.
Masamba from the UNFCCC, who was initially supposed to be moderating the session but was unable to attend, is very kindly to give us a couple of statements, and then perhaps we can go to some questions.
Okay.
All right.
So hello, good afternoon.
Hi, Masamba. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And good afternoon to all of you. This is really a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to join remotely. I would have preferred to be with you. Unfortunately, it's not possible, but I'm still happy to have the opportunity to provide input remotely to this very important conference. So, as you know, the world is currently facing two big challenges, and these are really very important challenges, sustainability and climate change, but they also offer a lot of opportunity. To be able to mobilize this opportunity, we need to work on all the enabler. One of them is finance, another one is innovation, and we have also public policy. It is also very important to know that if we want to face this challenge, we need to act at all levels. And I will go straight to one that is very important for us, on which we are putting now a lot of focus. This is facilitating climate action at the level of individual citizen. But this requires a framework with a high level of granularity. So it means that all these enabler, finance, innovation, policy making, need to be brought down to the level of individual citizen to create a framework that will make them act. And fortunately, in that area, there is a lot of synergy between financial inclusion, that is the main topic of your organization, and climate change, particularly empowerment for climate action of individual citizens. Because if we want individual citizens to act, we need not only to give them direction for action, we need to give them capability to act. And among these capability to act, you have finance. We need to give them also incentive for action. Just giving very simple example, if you want, for example, a lady from the rural area in Sierra Leone to contribute in climate change, let's say through access to efficient cook stove, they need to be able to have some kind of finance availability to invest in this improved cook stove. So channeling climate finance to our microfinance that is supporting green activities will be very critical. And then if you ensure financial inclusion, you will give opportunity to the most vulnerable to contribute in mitigation. I think this was the main topic of the first presentation of our colleague from Bangladesh. Because, for example, if you allow individual citizens in a rural area to have access to clean energy, you are contributing to Agenda 2030, sustainable development, as well as to climate change. And then you will give also to the population enhanced adaptive capacity. So, but if you want to measure the contribution at this individual level down to the individual citizen, the contribution to climate action, and if you want to incentivize at that level, this is where the Fintech and this exponential technology come into picture. This is the only way forward to change the current system and put in place a framework for measurement and incentive of action down to the level of individual citizen. You can actually take one individual consumer and measure its contribution to the long-term goal of the Paris Agreement. I think it was, to a large extent, the focus of the last intervention just before me. Now, all these things can only take place in the context of the right regulatory framework that is enabling the development of fintech, that is enabling the empowerment of individual citizens so that they act on climate, and that is also enabling financial inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Maybe Masamba, if you can just hang on, if there are any questions that are maybe you can comment on, if you can just hang around for the discussion session.
Please, Sarah. Mr. Liman must apologize because he should leave for his flight. So many thanks for Mr. Thank you. And the question was about the barriers and how to see the role of regulators to facilitate the adoption of such innovative technology in a way to deepen financial inclusion and enforce climate change. Yes, please.
Well, in my personal opinion, the main barrier of financial inclusion in the field of climate change, mitigation and adaptation are transaction costs. It really is very difficult because financial institutions, what they want a result-based financing. They would want to see a specific and verified results of the fundings that they provide. But this process is difficult. Decision-making process is very costly. Verification is costly, and but this measures in the field of climate change need to be verified, need to be independently verified. They need to be absolute. They need to be there has to be trust built on this verification, and this is and the whole negotiating process is very costly. So the transaction costs are the main barrier in my point of view.
Perhaps Mr. Kazemi, you want to add something?
Actually, I skipped most of the details of how we are trying to motivate and incentivize. I'm not going into that. So I am just going into one point of what we are not doing. I have mentioned that we are trying to promote finance for transition to sustainable production practices. But we need to promote sustainable consumption as well. So it would seem straightforward, well, give incentives to sustainable consumption financing and disincentive for unsustainable ones. Problem there is we don't have any broad-based social consensus about how much trade-off we can make between sustainable and unsustainable ones. To quote just one example, experts are telling us that if we just decrease our meat consumption by something like 10 to 15%, we'll do a whole lot of good equivalent of many tons of replacement of renewable energy. So, but this simple transition, on the paper simple, but how to influence them, I suppose AFI can take this on board as a thing, as a subject to develop some consensus on this trying. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it can be on the agenda of AFI. Thank you.
Okay. As a way of wrapping up, what we realized also in Sierra Leone for this pay as you go, we found out that most of the institutions or the organizations providing these services are foreign institutions. But for it to be on a sustainable basis, we need to have our own local companies. So for Sierra Leone, for Bank of Sierra Leone, one of our roles is to ensure that we are discussing with commercial banks to see how they can give, prioritize loans, credit to local people, because we also paid adherence to our local content law in Sierra Leone. And if that is the case, then one of the major deterrents to also accessing credit in Sierra Leone is this tedious KYC. We are also developing a tiered KYC to ensure that people get access to credit according to their level of income and inherent risk in them. In our rural areas, the land property is not owned by individuals. It is communally owned, like land, house, and all the rest. So there is that problem of when you go to the commercial bank to take a loan, they ask you for collateral. So what we have done is, as a central bank, also to ensure that these local people get access to credit. We have also established the collateral registry that actually accepts movable assets as collateral. And equally so, which is the major problem, which is lack of the capital. 1 minute, please. We are discussing with the Ministry of Energy, at least to create a line of credit. And the central bank, we have been doing what we call the credit guarantee scheme. We can still resuscitate that. Thank you. That, if we do that, I'm sure we can do it on a sustainable basis.
Time is running out. Perhaps one comment from Mr. Masamba.
Yeah, very quickly on this question, what could be done to further scale up the use of fintech for financial inclusion? I think one of the most important point is to actually widen the access to fintech. It is already accessible to part of the population, but something needs to be done to make it more widely accessible. And there, climate finance could play a role, and also enabling policies by government could help broaden the accessibility of fintech. Thank you.
Time is running out, so we couldn't receive a question from the audience, but I'm sure that we can continue our conversation out of this office. I will thank you all for giving us the opportunity to explore how innovative action fintech can contribute to sustainable development and climate change and clean energy in emerging countries and low-income countries, and how regulators see their role in tackling climate change in their country. Thank you for all the panelists, and thank you for audience to attend this session.